The night my wheat field burned, I watched 10 months of work turn into a wall of fire, started by the same HOA that once fined me for the color of my dirt. And I swear for a second, I thought I was watching my whole family history die in front of me. As I stood there coughing in the smoke, my phone rang, and the president of that HOA was screaming that it was my fault, while her own subdivision lit up orange behind her, like the gates of hell had picked the wrong zip code. That was the moment I stopped trying to be the reasonable neighbor and decided I was going to walk this thing all the way down to the truth, no matter who it dragged with it. My name is Scott Morris. I'm 54, retired firefighter, small wheat farmer by choice, and the kind of stubborn that comes from burying a father who worked this same dirt before me. My place sits just outside a town called Maple Ridge. Not much out here, but sky, dust, wind, and people who usually mind their own business. For a long time, life was simple. Early coffee on the tailgate, checking the rows, listening to the wind, keeping the pump running, and the equipment sharp. I've seen enough wildfires up close to know you don't play games with dry grass, and you don't argue with weather. You respect it, or you lose. Things stayed quiet until the developers showed up with glossy brochures and artists' sketches of some master-planned community that was going to be an elevated lifestyle experience. What they built was Cedar Ridge, a strip of big beige houses jammed along my east fence with baby trees, artificial turf, and an HOA that came free with every mortgage like a virus. Cedar Ridge brought in their own little government, and they crowned a woman named Savannah Clark as president. She was the type who smiled, with her teeth talked like a PR email, and carried a clipboard like it was a badge. First time I met her, I was tightening a fence wire. White SUV, 2 matching polos, sunglasses, logos over their hearts. She stepped out, looked at my field like she'd discovered crime. "Mr. Morris, is it?" she asked, like she already regretted saying my name. "We've received complaints. Your wheat is extremely tall, it's visually disruptive for our residents, and presents a potential fire hazard." I looked at her, then at the wheat, then back. "Ma'am, it's a wheat field. Wheat grows. That's kind of the job description." The treasurer, Monica, kept snapping photos. Savannah didn't laugh. "We'll be conducting a maintenance burn along the common strip by your fence to reduce risk," she said. "You'll need to clear your side and cooperate with our schedule." I pulled my phone, opened the county website, held it so she could see. "We're under a level 5 fire ban," I said. "No open burns, no exceptions, no maintenance fire. You light anything out here, it'll be illegal. And if it touches my land, it becomes evidence." She gave this tight little smile. "Our contractor is certified. We have things handled." "No, you don't," I said, still calm. "Not with this wind, not in this county, not this dry." She turned to Monica. "Document his refusal," then slid a flyer into my hand about creating harmony through consistency. Later, I used it to shim a wobbling workbench leg. Harmony. Yeah, that happened. After that, the letters started. Non-compliant vegetation visible from Cedar Ridge. Overgrown combustible material. Failure to maintain acceptable appearance and safety standard. They were talking about my crop like it was a pile of trash bags. I didn't yell, didn't go online, didn't rant at a board meeting. I did what 20 years of incident reports taught me I documented. I emailed the HOA with a copy of the fire ban, laid it out plain. I copied the county fire marshal. I sent certified letters, kept the receipts, printed everything. I started a folder and wrote on the tab, "If when." And because with people like that, it's never if, it's when. A few days later, I came back from town, stepped out of the truck, and smelled it before I saw it. Burnt weeds. Along the Cedar Ridge side of the fence there was a black tongue of char, still warm about 20 feet long. One section of my drip line was melted. In the ash, I found a cheap plastic torch nozzle. No one called. No one knocked. No apology, no warning, just damage in my direction. I took pictures from every angle, shot a video, read the date and time into the mic, like I was on duty again. I called Savannah. No answer. Left a voicemail in a steady voice. Savannah, this is Scott. Someone from your side lit an open burn next to my field under a level 5 ban. I've documented it and notified the county. Do not do that again. The next day, instead of fixing it, they posted a violation notice saying my wheat was a hazardous fuel source, endangering their community, and giving me 48 hours to remediate. I laughed so hard, I scared a crow off the fence. That was the turn for me. Before that, I thought they were just annoying. Now, I understood they were dangerous, ignorant with a clipboard, and that's a bad mix. So I put up a couple of small cameras on my side pointed down the line. Nothing crazy, just insurance. I checked them with my morning coffee, like checking weather. Couple of nights later, the air felt wrong tight, like the whole valley was holding its breath. Forecast said high winds coming, no moisture, the kind of setup I've seen turn a cigarette butt into a mile-wide problem. Near midnight, I checked the fence line. Down by the greenbelt on their side, I saw it. A small orange flicker, then another. 3 figures hunched over something, then a quick flare and a scatter of sparks. I hit record. Unauthorized open flame on Cedar Ridge HOA property. I whispered to the camera. 11:42 p.m. Ban still active. I sent it to the county hotline with a note. Went to bed in my jeans with my boots by the door. You know that feeling when you already know what tomorrow is going to do to you, but there's nothing left to prep. Around 3 a.m., the wind came in. If you've never heard high wind roll over dry land in the dark, it's like a freight train made of teeth. I smelled smoke before I saw light. By the time I reached the back porch, there was already a dirty orange halo crawling along the brush line where they'd been playing arson with paperwork all week. It was moving fast. Embers hopped the ditch like it wasn't even there, licking at the edge of my wheat. I fired up the pump, cursed at the pressure, dragged hose, carved a shallow scrape with a shovel, trying to cut it off. But the fire just laughed, took the wheat, and ran. The sound of a field catching isn't a roar. At first, it's a hiss, then a deep, hungry sea. The heat hit my face. The sky went wrong. I heard Lily behind me on the porch, half awake. Barefoot voice shaking. "Dad, what do we do? Truck!" I shouted. Now. Right then, my phone rang. Cedar Ridge HOA office. I almost ignored it. Then answered smoke in my lungs. Savannah was screaming. "Mr. Morris, your field is on fire. It's coming toward our homes. You need to control this." Something in me just snapped into place. "No," I said steady. "This is your illegal burn that never should have happened. You were warned." She started to say something about liability, about me being responsible. I hung up. In front of me, my field, my father's field, was lost. Behind me, my daughter was crying as we threw bags and documents into the truck. And then the twist hit. The wind shifted. Just a little, but enough. Embers that had been driving west into my land curled and flew back toward Cedar Ridge, like the whole sky had changed its mind about who it was mad at. From the hill above where we parked by an old reservoir, we watched the line blow back across their fancy rock beds and decorative fences. Propane grills, popped backyard decks, lit up like kindling stucco walls glowed. Sirens started to scream from town, too far, too late. I didn't cheer. I didn't clap. I just stood there with my hands shaking on the steering wheel, thinking I begged you not to do this. You signed the delivery for the warnings. You laughed. This is not an accident. By sunrise, my field was a black ocean. My house was standing barely. Cedar Ridge looked like a war movie. Melted cars, chimneys, arches of black. And already on the radio, I heard the line, "Authorities are investigating whether a nearby agricultural property contributed to the rapid spread." There it was. I knew it was coming. The story where the quiet farmer is the reckless one. Wrong guy. County Fire Marshal's office rolled in with trucks and tripods and measuring tapes. Lead investigator Mark Grant walked my fence in silence, checked my pump, studied the cameras I'd set up. I handed him the if-when folder. Emails, certified letters, photos of the first scorch, voicemail transcript where Monica said, "Authorized vegetation management," video of the midnight flames. He and his team followed the burn pattern from my field, back to their greenbelt, then all the way to a clump of half-melted barrels, right behind a Cedar Ridge Safety Initiative sign. Later in that dry, matter-of-fact tone, "Only fire people have," he said, "It started on their side, Scott, not yours." That same afternoon, Savannah pulled into my drive in a black SUV, sunglasses on, flanked by a lawyer who looked like he'd bill her for blinking. Cameras lingered at the road. She pointed right at me. "Your failure to maintain defensible space and your aggressive behavior toward our contractors created a hostile environment that directly led to this disaster," she said loud enough for anyone nearby to hear. I didn't have to answer. Mark stepped between us. "Ms. Clark," he said, "our initial findings show no permits for any controlled burn issued to Cedar Ridge. Ignition originated on HOA property. I strongly recommend you speak to your attorney before saying anything else." For the first time, she looked scared. Not sorry. Scared. The investigation kept digging. Turned out there were emails where she and her VP pushed for cheap burns instead of overpriced clearing. A contractor handed over a voice memo where Savannah said, "If it creeps toward Morris, that's on him. He's always filming, we'll make it his mess." They played that for the district attorney. Nobody laughed. Next thing I knew, the county was filing charges violation of the burn ban. Reckless endangerment, property destruction. There was a public hearing. People from Cedar Ridge showed up in borrowed suits, some still smelling like smoke. A few tried to glare at me like I'd personally summoned the wind. When I testified, I didn't grandstand. I told it straight. I warned them. I documented. I followed the law. I respected the risk. They did not. On the stand, Savannah's lawyer tried to twist it, asked, "Isn't it true your crop was dry and flammable?" I looked at the jury. "Everything in this county is flammable in August," I said. "Difference is, I wasn't the one lighting matches to save money." Then came the recording. Her voice talking about lighting it at night, about blaming me if it spread. The room went so quiet you could hear people swallowing. That was the day the story stopped being tragic community fire and became what it really was, a preventable disaster with names attached. The verdict came faster than I expected. Guilty of gross negligence, violating emergency orders, contributing to the blaze. Restitution, probation, real consequences. Savannah lost her position, her shiny little power thrown, her standing in a town she'd tried to control, like a dollhouse. Some of her supporters still say it was unfair, that the wind was unpredictable, that everyone does controlled burns, that the media turned her into a monster for one bad call. Maybe they believe that. Maybe it's easier than admitting they liked having someone else to enforce their comfort for them. I stood at my fence a few weeks after the trial, looking at the new green, pushing through the black, holding a check that didn't come close to covering what I'd lost. And I felt, not triumph, not revenge, just this steady sense that for once the right people had to answer for the thing they set in motion. Fire doesn't care about titles, rooftops, HOA logos, or newsletter language. It cares about fuel, wind, and arrogance. And arrogance was the only thing Cedar Ridge ever had in surplus. So here's where I leave it with you. Do you think what happened to that HOA board was enough? Or do you think people like that are just symptoms of something bigger that lets small power go unchecked until it ruins lives? Have you ever watched someone with a little authority, a boss, a board, a neighbor, an HOA, push it so far that you knew it was going to break something important? Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me what side you're on. In this, drop your own story in the comments. And if you think these kinds of people need more sunlight on what they do, hit subscribe so this kind of truth gets louder than their paperwork.